Dr. Padma Subramaniam will give a lecture demonstration on Nritta and Natya Shastra with special reference to Karanas. Karanas are dance units. Earlier they were depicted just as poses on various temple walls, and many of the Sanskrit scholars also interpreted them as poses, static poses. But it is Dr. Padma who went through the details and evolved the movements of each of them. And they have such variety and beauty in these movements, which we can all share today. And it has a lot of scope in classical dance, modern dance, and futuristic dance.
गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णु गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरु साक्षात् परं ब्रह्म तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः।
It's nice to have a few elite here while this recording is being done. I feel more inspired to speak to you people than to the camera. I thank ISIS here, Mrs. Venkatesh and others who invited me here to share my thoughts on something which I have loved all my life. It's not to give a sermon that I have come here. It's not as though I want to proclaim that I have achieved something which hasn't been known, but I am here to share my joy with you. Pardon me for my bad throat. Karanas have become a very popular subject. How much of it is really understood is anybody's guess. But it has become popular in the last 2 decades than before. The Natya Shastra is called Natya Veda. The term Veda means, from its root, vid, knowledge. So when you call Natya Veda, when you term the work as Natya Veda, it is knowledge supreme, and systematization of that knowledge is Shastra. A unique combination that you find in this particular work of Bharata is that it is Natya Veda, and at the same time it is Natya Shastra as well. In India, we have been so much used to learning subjects relating to Indian culture from Western point of view. In the last 200 years, we have been so much used to looking at our own culture from the eyes of the Westerner, and this creates certain problems.
In any field of knowledge in India, there has always been a holistic approach, whether it is art or science, whether it is Ayurveda or astronomy. What was most important was they started teaching with a holistic approach. For instance, to understand the relationship between the self and the cosmos, and that was the ultimate goal. So Vidya was considered to be that which gives salvation. Sa Vidya ya vimuchyate. And from this point of view, Natya Shastra is certainly Natya Veda. And while systematizing this knowledge, the same work becomes Shastra, for it gives us formulas, as in science. Formulas with regard to use of the body, with regard to use of speech, with regard to use of external elements such as costumes, makeup and so on, and also formulas with regard to understanding and analyzing characters and situations. The Karana, as found in the Natya Shastra, can be studied from all these points of view. Karanas have been mostly misunderstood as postures, not only now, even 150 years back, some of the works on dance have not been able to describe Karanas properly. A Tamil work has mentioned Karana as Kuti Karanam, just somersault movement. It is called Munnandam and Pinnandam. And in short, it is only understood as some acrobatic movements, somersaults either in front or back. And only 4 such acrobatic movements are described under this term called Karana in that work. This only shows that knowledge about Karanas was not there in the last few centuries. And this was very evident even when I studied the sculptures, particularly with regard to sculptures in Kumbakonam temple, where sculptures are not even kept in the proper order. The serial order as found in the Natya Shastra is highly disturbed. And it was not easy to study those sculptures. And thanks to Dr. Ramchandran, my revered guru, under whose feet I had the good fortune of studying, not for getting a tailpiece attached to my name as PhD, but because I wanted to learn. I studied under him for 12 years. And my thesis took nearly 12 years, or even more, I would say, to be completed. It was not easy for me, being a performing artist, to concentrate and write immediately all that I was thinking about. And one more thing, I did not want to write that way also. I tried in my body every movement for months and sometimes years, and only later, after I thought that I have arrived at a point where it could not be interpreted differently, I put it down in writing. It was not for any personal glorification that I took up this task. Here is something, I would say, a treasure that I was ordained to come across. And my humble duty towards the posterity is to see that I share this treasure with those who are sincerely interested. And if it is not going to be received, my dear friends, I will not be disappointed, because I have done it with no axe to grind. I have done my duty. Karmanyeva adhikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana. So I leave the fruit in the hands of that Almighty, and also in the hands of God in flesh and blood, Pujya Sri Paramacharya of Kanchi, whose guidance I was able to get after my Guru passed away. There were occasions when I had to differ with my own Guru, Dr. Ramchandran. I had other views, and it was not easy, but I was determined not to go to any other Guru for guidance. And it was a miracle that I could come across certain references only through Paramacharya's grace, and after he showed me the torch, all those problems were solved for me, including the chronology, including the time when the Karanas were forgotten. I know sometimes I have been described as a creative artist. I object to this phrase. I have never been creative. I have been only recreating. I do not want to take any undue credit for myself. I would like to place the cards before you. I have not done anything on my own. I am like a postman. I am only delivering the letters to you. It is for you to take it or leave it. I am like a Pauranika who narrates the Ramayana or Mahabharata. All those Pauranikas who tell you the stories of Mahabharata or Ramayana are not Valmikis and Vyasas. They only tell you the story which was written by somebody else. They can't claim to be the authors of those works. In the same way, I am only delivering the goods that I came across in my life. This experience is what I want to share with others. There is nothing that I have added. I have only discovered. The Natya Shastra is a voluminous encyclopedic work which deals with almost all the aspects of performing art. It runs to 36 chapters, and the date of this work has been also bungled, or I would say it has been looked at from Western point of view. I have my own humble opinion, but I wouldn't like to go into those details today. We'll concentrate on the technique of Karanas. But even to understand where the Karana stands in Natya Shastra, you must have some idea of what Natya Shastra itself is. Natya, according to Natya Shastra, is not dance alone. Natya really means drama. The theatre art on the whole is called Natya. And Nritta or Tandava were part of this Natya. The terms Tandava and Nritta are synonyms according to Natya Shastra, and Tandava and Lasya, as understood today, have come down to us only in the post-Kalidasa period. Tandava, which is understood today as masculine dance, and Lasya, which is understood today as feminine dance, are referred to, these concepts are there in Natya Shastra, but these terms are not used in that sense. Tandava that we understand today used to be called the Uddhata Prayoga of Tandava or Nritta. And the Lasya of today used to be called the Sukumara Prayoga of Tandava or Nritta. So Nritta and Tandava were synonyms. And Nritta and Tandava are, I mean, Tandava itself is an anga in Natya. Now, the dramatic art has its goal. Why do we perform drama? The goal of any production is rasa. And how do we get this rasa? How do we manage to enjoy this rasa is perhaps what is mentioned, what is described, the process through which rasa is blossoming is described in all the 36 chapters. It's not just one chapter, but the greatness of the Natya Shastra is that if you want to understand one chapter of Natya Shastra, you will have to be thorough with all the 36 chapters. And I don't agree with some scholars saying that the first 5 or 4 chapters were written by one Bharata and the later chapters were written by other Bharatas taking the same pen name Bharata. I myself did this mistake some years back in my book called Bharata's Art Then and Now. I have myself mentioned there that the present Natya Shastra is a compilation of many authors, works of many authors. Thanks to my experience and deeper study now in the last few years, I'm convinced that the whole work is of one author's production, and there may be interpolations here and there in every chapter. That is not important, but the chapter alignment and the subject matter seen in every chapter makes me feel that there is a continuity. Because to answer a question raised in one chapter, sometimes we have to turn the pages of some other chapter. For instance, the questions are raised in the first chapter may be answered in the 36th chapter also. So the whole thing has to be looked in a holistic view. And with regard to the production, we have 4 mediums of expression. This is very often said, Angika, Abhinaya, Vachika Abhinaya, Aharya Abhinaya, and Satvika Abhinaya, the 4 mediums of expression. And Angika, all these are important for Natya proper. The dialogues are important. And as far as the first one, Angika Abhinaya, is concerned, in the last few centuries, in the South, we have been concentrating on the hand gestures aspect of Angika Abhinaya alone and not using the whole body. And according to Natya Shastra, Angika Abhinaya is made up of 3 elements. Shaka, Ankura, and Nritta. Shaka literally means branch. By Shaka, Bharata means the hand gestures. The Abhinaya hands which are given are quite familiar with everybody knows. I must say that the Natya Shastra tradition, as far as the Abhinaya Hastas are concerned, have been totally preserved in South. Almost all the Hastas mentioned in the Natya Shastra are being used in the same context, in the same meaning in the South, except in Kerala where the hand gestures are getting other names. We won't go into the details now. And this is Shaka, because if we take the body to be a tree, the trunk, the hands are the branches. So using the hands and the given number of gestures are Shaka. It's not enough if you have a language, you must know how to use the language. You can write poetry with language if you have the imagination. And this aspect is called Ankura. Ankura means sprout. So the gestures may be there, but how exactly will you use the gestures is Ankura. Now, for example, everybody knows that this is a Pataka Hasta. Everybody knows that it can be used in different ways. We have the Vinyogas as well. For instance, a Suchi and a Kapita are mentioned even in Abhinaya Darpana for denoting goddess Saraswati. Alright, this is a hasta which is given, described. This cannot be called Ankura. But what are the other ways in which you can manage to represent Saraswati? This is Ankura. You can say, she is the wife, consort of the Chaturmukha Brahma. You can say, she is the one who is riding on the swan. She is the one who wears the white vastra. She is the one who is sitting on the white lotus. She is the one who has the rosary and the pustaka in her hands. She is the one who is Vagdevata. So these are how you can make poetry out of the given language. This is called Ankura. This is the second aspect of Angika Abhinaya. The third aspect of Angika Abhinaya is Nritta. You see how Nritta, which is supposed to be Bhava Vihinam and Rasa Vihinam according to medieval authorities, is being used as one of the elements of Angika Abhinaya in Bharata's work. There is a terrible gap between the ancient Natya Shastra and even the medieval works because, well, I don't know, I again want to deviate and go into the reasons. There is a gap. So, you see that Nritta, which is considered to be part of Angika Abhinaya, which is considered to be full of scope for expressing ideas. If you call it Abhinaya, that means it is possible to express ideas through Nritta. Once something is expressed, then there must be a result for it. Naturally, there is rasa, there is bhava, and there is rasa. Hence, this concept of Nritta being bhava vihinam and rasa vihinam, as described by the medieval authorities, has no relevance as far as Natya Shastra is concerned. So, Shaka, Ankura and Nritta are the three elements of Angika Abhinaya. And what is Nritta made up of? Nritta is made up of Karanas. Actually, the term Karana is called Nritta Karana in Natya Shastra, and they are 108 in number. And this is the very foundation or the, I would say, substratum of Indian dance. And the Karanas are described in the 4th chapter. The first 3 chapters deal with something else. The actual dance aspect is introduced only in the 4th chapter. And the Karana is this is the formula again, as we find a definition for Karana in Natya Shastra. Hasta pada samayogaha nrittasya karanam bhavet. When the hands and feet are combined in Nritta, it has to be aesthetic. That is why he says, in Nritta, Nrittasya karanam bhavet. Only when it is in the form of dance, it gets the status of a Karana. You can't say while combining hands and legs, it can be any displacement or any kind of movement. That cannot be called Karana. Nrittasya karanam bhavet. This is the definition Bharata gives, and it is impossible to understand Bharata's Natya Shastra without the help of Abhinav Gupta's commentary called Abhinava Bharati. There were other commentaries before Abhinava Bharati was written, but unfortunately, we don't have those commentaries in full except in the form of quotations. Abhinava Bharati was discovered in 30s, and the discovery has been a milestone in the history of Natya Shastra. And the Abhinava Bharati, written by Abhinav Gupta, comes from Kashmir. Abhinav Gupta lived in the early part of 11th century, and it is interesting to note that when Abhinav Gupta was writing the commentary for Natya Shastra in Kashmir, simultaneously Rajaraja Chola, the greatest of the Chola kings, was making the sculptures, the sculptural representation of the Karanas in proper serial order down south in Tanjavur. And this happened simultaneously. Where is Kashmir and where is Tanjavur? And see the unity. I don't like the phrase creating national integration. When you use the phrase creating national integration, it implies that you are trying to do something artificial. Actually, integration is immanent in our country. All that we need is only to create an awareness about this integration. If we read our scriptures, we are convinced that every part of this Mother Earth is ours. Entire Bharatavarsha was one in thought, one in word, one in deed. And the Natya Shastra throws ample light on this. There were commentaries, nearly 12 of them. All these commentaries came from Kashmir. It's not a sheer coincidence. That means there was so much Natya in Kashmir where we have completely lost that tradition today. And it's God's grace that we have been able to preserve that Natya Shastra dance technique in stone in Tamil Nadu. There are dance sculptures all over India. It's not only in Tamil Nadu. There are dance-like sculptures and dance sculptures all over our country. But what is special about some of these temples in Tamil Nadu is that these sculptures were made as a sculptural or a stone codification of the 4th chapter of Natya Shastra. They are visual libraries, ever preserved in silence for those who are interested. And the Natya Shastra has given us not only dance, as I said, it has given us all the aspects of performing arts, including music, instrumental music, Gita, Vadya, and Nrittam. All these three together is called Sangeetam. And the Gandharva Veda is mingled in the present Natya Veda. Following the precepts of Bharata's Natya Shastra was a common heritage to India. Natya Shastra was followed all over India until the 12th century. It was followed in the North India until the 12th century, and until the 14th century, that is up to the Chola rule in South India as well. But then there is a change, there is a gap. Because of certain political and economic reasons, the ancient arts were forgotten. There are inscriptions to prove this. In the south, I am only giving you history. When the Muslims came and invaded Madurai, there was a gap of nearly 50 years when Madurai was under Muslim rule. And most of the temples were closed down, and the Devadasis ran away. Of course, they were old, they died. And when Kumarakampana came back from, he came with the zeal to revive not just the political aspect of Hinduism, but to revive the cultural aspect of Hinduism. When he came down south, when he reopened the temples, the Devadasis were not available. Thanks to Saint Vidyaranya, one frail little personality from the physical point of view, who was responsible for whatever we still preserve today. It was he, it was the saint who revived all the cultural aspects. He called scholars to reconstruct the lost music and dance technique. And it was during that period, I would say even after Vidyaranya's period, that the Darpana literature came into being. You have Abhinaya Darpana, you have Natya Darpana, Sangeeta Darpana, Sahitya Darpana. Darpana means mirror. So the authors of these Darpana works were very, very authentic. They were true to history. They did not claim that they are reconstructing something which was lost. They said, here is something we are trying to reconstruct. And they called it Darpana because it's a reflection of something which was lost, something which was older and not the original. It's the image and not the original. So these are called Darpanas. And in that process, for example, Chatura Damodara's Sangeeta Darpana, he says, I'm unable to understand some of the ragas mentioned by Sarangdeva in Sangeeta Ratnakara. Sangeeta Ratnakara was written in 12th century. A work written in 12th century which followed Natya Shastra and also added the new elements was not understood in the 16th century. There was he calls it Lakshana Lakshya Viruddham, discrepancy between theory and practice. And if this could happen between 12th and 16th century, imagine the discrepancy that should be there today, between today and during Bharata's time. At least till 12th century, we preserved the older tradition, along with new tradition called Deshi. This is what I wanted to tell you. There were new works written based on regional forms, and they were called Deshi. The technique was called Deshi, and the first Deshi work was Brihat Deshi, written by Matanga Muni. This was written somewhere between 8th and 9th century. It's called Brihat Deshi because Brihat means big. It's a great big work on all the Deshi forms. And we are able to see how the Deshi or the indigenous regional styles coexisted along with one common classical style called Margi. Marga is the path shown by Bharata, and Margi is a style which means the older classical common style. I can only compare Margi and Deshi to Sanskrit and all the regional languages. Till 100 years ago, Sanskrit was the lingua franca in India. Even when Max Muller wrote letters, he wrote letters in Sanskrit to our Pandits here, and he has written saying that there are papers, newspapers, weeklies in Sanskrit, and that is how people converse with each other in this vast subcontinent of ours. So till 100 years, Sanskrit was the common language, and Sanskrit coexisted with all the regional languages. All the regional languages were called Deshi languages or Prakrit. And Sanskrit was the link. And that is why all important works were written in Sanskrit, whether it came from Kashmir or Andhra or Tamil Nadu. all important works on important subjects were written in Sanskrit so that it becomes a common property, common heritage of everybody in Bharatavarsha. Just as how Sanskrit and regional languages coexisted till last century, till 12th century, Margi and Deshi coexisted in North India, and in South India, Margi and Deshi coexisted until 14th century. I am arriving at this just to tell you that I have not added anything. I have been, by God's grace, able to revive that common Margi technique as found in Natya Shastra. It is, please, I beg of you, don't call me a creative artist. It's against all the trouble that I took all these years. I can prove to anybody, any scholar, let someone come and ask me to perform something based on a particular text. I can do it. I say this with conviction, with confidence, because I know I am not responsible for the moment that I perform. I am not the creator of these that I perform. I am only recreating, like how the Vedas themselves are never believed to be composed. They were revealed. They were revealed to the rishis. And believe me, these movements are revealed to me. And I am not responsible for it. I would only say, quote here Vedanta Deshika, who said, Vellai Parimuhar Deshikarai Vantu, en Ullathil Ezhudiyadai Olayil Ittanam Yam Idarken. Means Hayagriva, with his white face of a horse, came and dictated something to in fact, he wrote something in my mind. Whatever he wrote in my mind, like as though I'm just typing something which has been given to me, I have copied that in my notebook. How am I connected with it? Idai ulagam kollakkedekkenum kodendru igalinum igavadu ugavadu en egil madiye. He says, I don't care if people praise it or they have dispraise for this, because it is not mine. Both are his. It means nothing to me because it is not mine. And so here is Margi, which was given to us compiled and given to us by Bharata Muni, which was followed in entire India. And if you see a movement which resembles Kathakali in my dance, if you see a movement which resembles the present Odissi, if you see my doing a fast footwork as you find only in Kathak today, it doesn't mean that I am mixing styles. I have never studied any other style other than what you call Bharatanatyam, which I call Sadur. That's the only style that I had learnt. I never learnt any other style, and I did not want to. In fact, in Delhi, somebody wrote about my dance 20 years back when I performed. He wrote, it was a beautiful movement that Padma did, but it looked like Odissi dance with Ribhanga. I promise you, I had never seen Odissi dance till then in my life, even to be influenced by it. And somebody else wrote, when I had my leaps and extension of legs, jumps and all that, somebody said, oh, Padma's father is very close to Soviet Union. He is the founder president of Indo-Soviet Cultural Society in Tamil Nadu. She is copying Western ballet. What nonsense. As though we don't have those movements in our sculptures. Let us not look at our culture. Let us not look at what India offers is unlimited. Let us not have blinkers. There is nothing that we in India have not achieved. It is for us to realize it. And each region has preserved something of that great work. I will show you the basic postures. And before I show you that, I would like to mention here that the karanas are not something which you can just perform just like that by copying sculptures. They have a definite, I would say there is a methodology for the pedagogy system of karanas. And it was not easy for me to reconstruct this pedagogy system because all that is mentioned in the Natya Shastra is in the reverse order. He talks of the whole and then starts bisecting and dissecting its angas. So that comes in the later chapters. Unless you understand the later chapters, the earlier chapter is all Greek and Latin. The karanas, though, are only defined as hastapada samayogaha nrittasya karanam bhavet, Abhinavgupta says, by hasta, you must understand that, the word hasta implies all the angas of the upper part of the body. And by pada, all the angas of the lower part of the body this is what is implied by the two terms hasta and pada. And while actually performing, it is very meaningful. So, in order to understand this concept, unless we go into the basic elements of karanas, it is difficult to understand what a karana is. Every karana is made up of three elements: the sthana, or a posture for the body; nrittahasta, or the movements for the entire arms. They are not the same as the abhinaya hastas, which are pertaining only to the palm. This is for the whole arm. I will now ask my disciples to show you how every major and minor limb has to be trained according to Natya Shastra before you can think of karanas. The entire pedagogy system has been evolved from the Natya Shastra. Normally we start traditionally the Sadhu or the Bharatanatyam, we started with some exercises. Only in Kalakshetra they start some exercises. Rest of them they start only with adavas. Here every major and minor limb has to be trained. Angas are major limbs because they are responsible for the body lines. Now for instance, the head, chest, hands, sides, waist and the feet are called angas. They are the major limbs. Because by just tilting my head, the body line changes. By bending my side, the body line changes. Whereas by moving my eyebrows, the body line doesn't change. It is an upanga. It's only a minor limb. So there are upangas in the face and upangas in the body as well. We will just show you the angas. She is Uma Sriram in the lighter green sari. She has been with me for over 25 years. And she is a senior disciple of mine who is a staff, also a staff member of our Nritya. And this girl is Rajalakshmi Subramaniam from Tiruchengodu. She has been with me for 10 years in our Nritya. Now they are doing the Shirobeda as per Natya Shastra. Shirobedam.
Kampitam, kampitam cha, dutam, vidutameva cha, parivahito, udvahitakam,
अवधुतं तथा अंचितं निहंचितं परावृत्तं उक्षिप्तं चाप्यधोगतं लोलितं चैव विज्ञेयं त्रयोदशविधं शिरः. उरोभेदं, chest variations. आभुग्नमथ निर्भुग्नं तथा चैव प्रकम्पितम् उद्वाहितं समं चैव उरः पञ्चविधं स्मृतम्. पार्श्वभेदं नतं समुन्नतं चैव प्रसारित विवर्तिते तथा अपश्रुतमेव तु पार्श्वयोः कर्म पञ्चधा.
You saw the Nata, the Parshva Veda. You saw how the side is bent and also stretched. I have seen how the sides are beautifully stretched in Guruji Kelucharan Mahapatra's demonstration, where he says Tribhanga is achieved not only through the hip but also by stretching the sides. And you see how the Nati Shastra gives you the foundation or the basis for this, and how Orissa alone has preserved this Parshva Veda, whereas the other regions have lost this. This is how each region has preserved some aspect. And when you tap the main source, when you tap the fountainhead, we are able to see which stream flows where.
Kati Veda.
Kati or waist. Chinna chaiva nivritta cha rechita kampita tatha udvahita cheti kati natye nritye cha panchadha. So these are the 5 variations of the waist. Kati natye nritye cha panchadha. So these are the movements of the waist which are to be utilized in nritta, that is dance, and natya. This only shows that the actor had to be a dancer if he had to be following the precepts of Natya Shastra. So the theatre art was something in which all the arts and crafts were combined. Then the feet variations. Udghatitah samaschiva. Udghatita is mid-tizzle of today's Bharatanatyam. This. We have the Tatti Met Tadavu. Some people do it like this, some people do it like this. What is important is bringing the heel down, striking with the heel as the toes are already planted. This is called Udghatita in Natya Shastra. Sama is Samapada. It can be in front or on the sides as well. Anchita, Adratala Sanchara. This is called Kuttudal. We have the Kuttadavu. We have adavus like this. All this is Agratala Sanchara. It can be this also. Then Anchita is Nattadavu. not to the Tamil, is called Anchita in Sanskrit. The last one is Kunchita. This is not in vogue in Sanskrit.